I found a diary tucked in a brick in an abandoned psych hospital. Part 3. After reading about Florence's latest entries, I was chilled to my core. I knew that lobotomies were a part of life at that time, and especially part of life within the mental health community. But that didn't make it less jarring to read, especially from the view of a 10-year-old girl. What kind of a mental health facility forces its patients to sit and watch a lobotomy being performed by a man with an ice pick? This man was literally injuring people permanently for the rest of their lives, and everyone thought it was great because it turns patients into a less violent type of patient. I decided to do a little bit of research on the history of lobotomies, and it looks like the procedure wasn't even normalized until a couple of years later, which means this entire situation was completely experimental. This man didn't have a medical license, and didn't have a clue what he was doing. He was essentially just sticking a sharp object into someone's eye socket and wiggling it around until the connections between the prefrontal lobe were severed. The more that I thought about the procedure being done in front of an audience, the more I wanted to lose my lunch. Before reading any further though, I wanted to do a little more research into who Florence was, and if we know who she was at all. If I couldn't find anything online, I figured there must be some kind of written record that just hadn't made its way to the internet yet. So I went to my local library. We have a historian that works here, and I made an appointment, and brought Florence's diary with me for her to evaluate. I didn't want to exactly say that I found the journal while trespassing on Kings Park grounds, so I said it was a family heirloom of sorts, and I wanted to know more about who wrote it. Immediately, she was intrigued, and after a little bit of ruffling through a big bookcase behind her desk, brought out a registry of people and families that live in the area at the same time that Florence would have. Because for as far as we know, Florence wasn't local. She could have been brought here from almost anywhere. We searched and searched the book for a birth record or something to prove that Florence existed, and we actually almost missed it. There was a small entry from 1908. All it said was that William and Margaret Blackwell had given birth to a baby girl, name unknown. That must have been them. It had to be them. Sure enough, there was a World War I draft registration card for William, and they were a couple towns over. These were too many similarities to be a coincidence. I was convinced this had to be Florence. I'm not exactly proud of what I did next, but I stalked the Blackwell family on Ancestry.com, and let me tell you, there are hundreds of people in the Long Island area with the last name Blackwell. But after a couple of sleepless nights and my college-educated research skills, I found them. With butterflies in my stomach, I sent a Facebook message to what seemed to be a family member. I'm withholding names for a reason, because I don't want anyone to bother him. He was a typical old guy on Facebook, sharing memes about President Trump and clickbait ads asking for thoughts and prayers. And I really didn't think he was going to answer me. But he did. William and Margaret were his great-grandparents, and their daughter, Eleanor, was his grandmother. She was born in 1919, and apparently had a hard life. Her father was an abusive drunk who came home with shell shock after the Great War. Her mother was too submissive to say anything, and took the brunt of his anger to protect her daughter. Eleanor grew up thinking she was the oldest and only in her family. But on her mother's deathbed in 1929, when Eleanor was only 10, she confessed that Eleanor wasn't the oldest. There was a daughter before her, one with a physical deformity that William had taken most of his anger out on. This physical deformity actually makes a lot of sense in the context of the next entry she had written. She used to wet the bed, and William couldn't stand to look her in the face. Eventually, he tucked her away at a mental hospital, and that's all she knew. Margaret had never seen her daughter again. While that was a lot of information to share with a stranger through Facebook, I think it was probably information that this man wanted to get off his chest. Imagine a family secret like that just burning a hole inside your memory. I offered to let him see the diary once I was done doing some research and figuring out what happened, and he agreed because he also wanted to know what happened to Florence, and figured with me being a good bit younger, I knew my way around a computer and the internet. So I decided to keep plugging along and sharing Florence's story. May 4th, 1918. I met Dr. Freeman today. He kept poking my face. Usually that makes me mad. Daddy used to poke my face and try and make it look normal, he said. But I didn't mind when Dr. Freeman did it. He was a doctor after all. Maybe he really could make me normal so that I'd be pretty like Mama. He asked me a whole bunch of questions like, did I ever get mad, or did I ever hit my mama or daddy? I said of course not. I wouldn't hurt my mama. But I think he thought I was lying. He kept writing a bunch of stuff down on his notepad. He writes way faster than me, but probably because he's an adult and knows a lot of stuff. Dr. Freeman kept asking me if I had a pet, and I told him about my bunny, and how she had run away to be with her bunny friends. But Dr. Freeman didn't seem happy about that, and wrote some more stuff on his pad. He asked me if I ever started fires, and I said of course not. There was a fire down the street from my house that killed a lot of people back when I was 9. Then he asked me about my wetting the bed. I told him that's why I'm here. I had to fix my problems so that I can go home to Mama and Daddy, and they won't be mad at me anymore. He said that he thought I wet the bed because I was just like some other very bad children he met at other hospitals, and he had made them not to be violent anymore, and he could do the same for me. I don't think I'm violent, but if Dr. Freeman says it could happen, maybe it could. Maybe I could turn out to be like Daddy instead of Mama. I just want Dr. Freeman to make me better, to go home to Mama. P.S. I am Florence, 0724.
This is Kinetic Symphony. If you've enjoyed this narrated story, please subscribe and like the video to help me grow. Thank you.